And today our gene technology project called Codis, our combined DNA index system by Jameson, Jake, Tiernan, and Nick. And now to the background. Codis, or Combined DNA Index System, was established by Congress in the 1990s and assists to provide investigative leads for law enforcement in cases where no suspect has been yet identified. Therefore, Codis provides a new investigative information on these cases. The FBI introduced the National DNA Database in 1998 with 9 states and soon began all 50. Through the amendment and expansion of DNA identification, Codis continues to help public forensic laboratories link crime scene evidence to other cases or to persons already convicted of or arrested for specific crimes. What are the processes of Codis? The processes of Codis are DNA profiles obtained from the relative samples that are submitted to the FBI's database or DNA index system. From there, the local or national will take control from either the fingerprints or the samples that were submitted, and then that's where that investigation begins. Why is it significant? Well, the reason is because the rate that it takes to solve a crime with Codis is reduced by 10%. And that it gives all local crime agencies to exchange the DNA profiles. But with something so significant, there's always pros and cons. And now to the pros and cons of Codis, starting with the pros. First, there are many federal and state laws that protect the privacy of data in the Codis database. The laws require that our profile are included in the Codis database come from accredited laboratories that process evidence in a secure, well-documented manner under procedures that are reviewed by the FBI regularly. The Codis database contains the areas of DNA that are non-coding or otherwise do not give information about a person's health, race, or how they look. The access to Codis is you're able to protect the privacy that the data contains. There are strict laws in the state of Colorado with 3 laws that genetic testing of the offenders, the testing of convicted offenders, adults, Codis laws for collective adult felony arrests, which law states that if you are an adult arrested for a felony, you will have DNA collected. Codis solves thousands of unsolved crimes in the state of Colorado. The DNA in Codis can quickly exclude someone from a crime. And lastly, Codis can help identify unidentified human remains. And now to the cons, which aren't too many of those. There are a lot of rules of how to use it. The perpetrator of the unsolved crime may not be in the database because they have not been caught for any crimes. And the data collected from the individuals that are convicted or arrested and charged for a crime. It is well documented that minorities are arrested and charged for felony crimes, so the database consists of minority individuals. And lastly, it's very easy to manipulate.
How Codis is stored. The officer collects the DNA from a crime scene's evidence and then puts it into a system, which this system contains the NDIS, which is the National DNA Index System, which can be accessed from all across the country. And it also includes the SDIS, which is the State DNA Index System, and the LDIS, which is the Local DNA Index System, which contains local forensic profiles. And according to our Codis expert, the NDIS, which is national, contains over 14,836,000 offender profiles and over 14,500,000 arrestee profiles.
Adding on to this, there's 2.7 million convicted offender profiles, 124,000 crime scene forensic profiles, 1,481 relatives of missing person profiles, 620 identified human remain profiles, and about 270 missing person profiles. How it is used during an investigation is, if they find a DNA sample from the suspect, they can try to match it up with an already existing sample from the Codis database. On the contrary, if you get caught committing some kind of crime, in the most case, they will take blood sample from you and then put your DNA in the database for potential later use if anything happens. And now for the expert analysis. Codis and DNA have evolved a lot since I first started working. Early in my career, we needed a sample of blood the size of a quarter to get a good profile. Now we get a good profile with only a few cells. We can use computer programs to separate mixtures of DNA profiles that contain 3 to 4 people. This allows more profiles to be entered into Codis. We are also able to search in more ways. This allows profiles that are incomplete to be searched for the first time. The way Codis helped solve crimes in Colorado like homicides, rapes, and kidnappings, as well as property crimes. One high-profile crime was the trial of Alex Ewing for the murder of the Bennett family. And Codis, if a suspect has DNA in Codis and the case has DNA too, if they don't match, that person can be eliminated as a suspect in the crime, and it helped exonerate innocent people. And when asked about ancestry in Codis, the short answer is no. Ancestry DNA is a sequence of DNA that contains hundreds of thousands of base pairs, sometimes a whole genome sequence. Codis DNA profiles only look at 20 areas of the DNA. Ancestry DNA is looking for our ways DNA is similar like everyone else's from this region at the same sequence at a specific location. Codis DNA profiles focus on how we are different, like the likelihood of this DNA profile being found in another person is 1 in 20, 230 quadrillion. And now real-world crimes that Codis has helped solve. In May of 2000, Codis was instrumental in solving the 1977 murder of a 6-year-old girl in Reno, Nevada. Beginning in 1977, various forensic tests were performed on the child's clothing, which was found in a dumpster a few miles from Reno. But the case remains unsolved in 1994. The perpetrator's DNA profile was developed from the clothing. The DNA profiles of numerous suspects were compared to the perpetrator's profile, but no match resulted. And in May of 2000, a second DNA profile from the clothing was developed using newer technology, and when the second DNA profile was entered into Codis, it was a match with the DNA profile of a 57-year-old convicted sex offender. The offender lived in the area and had been on parole since his release from prison in early 1976. The suspect pled guilty to kidnapping and murder in October 2000 and was sentenced the following month. And the last known crime Codis helped solve. In June of 1999, Codis linked 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Florida to 6 unsolved sexual assault cases in Washington, D.C. DNA evidence was crucial in Florida cases because none of the victims were able to describe the offender and no other physical evidence was left at the crime scene. And in early July of 1999, the perpetrator of the 9 assaults, who is deceased, was identified through DNA analysis. And now the closing statement. This form of DNA technology, known as Codis, Combined DNA Forensic System, has revolutionized forensic science in the long run because it has changed the way law enforcement has solved crimes and due to the fact that this technology is very reliable and accurate. And lastly, also Codis has a positive aspect on suspect identification across multiple crimes, including burglaries, homicides, and sexual assaults.